This is the last lesson.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, I got it's next week.
You got next week. Okay. Yeah, this is it. All right.
Microphone.
Yeah.
So it comes
That
off
thing
all the time.
comes off. Okay.
All right. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Ooh. Let's see here. I tell you what, Ed, can you lead us in prayer? Sorry.
Most loving, gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you indeed for this day, the blessed of this day. We thank you so much that we're able to assemble here this morning and learn more of your will. We pray that you be with Brother David as he presents a lesson that will be easily applied to our lives, and we can use it when we meet people. Father, we want you to know we love you so much. We love your Son for the great act of love that he done on the cross. And we ask that you continue to be with us. For these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, this will be the last lesson in the Fruitful book. It's kind of a summary lesson, and you might turn to Galatians chapter 5. We will refer back to that, and we will end up going over each of the fruits of the Spirit and talking a little bit about it. So I'll ask for some class participation, especially when we get to that part of the lesson. The key verse is, let's do this. I referred to.
What page in the book?
It is this book, Fruitful book, and it is page 81, lesson 13, the very last lesson. Let's tell you what. Let's read Galatians 5:16 through 26. We'll just take care of that right off the bat. And again, this is a summary of what we've been talking about 13 weeks here in this study. So Galatians 5, starting with verse 16. Let's see. Brenda, okay, thank you.
So I say, live by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the sinful nature. For the sinful nature desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the sinful nature. They are in conflict with each other, so that you do not do what you want, but you are led by the Spirit if you are not under law. The acts of the sinful nature are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousies, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other.
Okay, thank you. So, and the key verse, kind of to sum it all up, is, as it's put in the book, is if we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step with the Spirit. And that's as Galatians 5:25, as Brenda read. This warm-up starts off, in a world that desires to be healthy but is also concerned about personal comforts, it should come as no surprise that someone would find a way to take advantage of the consumer market. It happened in 2004, and the BBC reported under the title, Jail for Diet Donut Seller. An Illinois man begins a 15-month jail sentence on Tuesday for misleading dieters into buying donuts. Robert Ligon repackaged normal donuts as low-fat, saying they contained only 3 grams of fat and 135 calories and were carb coated. In fact, they contained 18 grams fat, 530 calories, and were chocolate glazed. Ligon was caught when suspicious customers complained to the Food and Drug Administration about how tasty his products were. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Jim Dahl, assistant director of the FDA's Office of Criminal Investigation, told the Wall Street Journal newspaper. Science can do a lot of things, but we're not quite there yet, he said. Ligon's conviction follows a 3-year investigation during which his premises were raided and 18,720 donuts seized. Officers, that sounds kind of familiar. Officers seizing donuts is a stereotype, you know. They were seized, and officers found that for 2 years he had been turning a healthy profit buying the donuts for about 25 cents each and selling them for $1. I've participated in my fair share of diets over the years, and there's one thing I can tell you, choices make a difference. I can also tell you that choosing is hard. I would love a diet donut in my life, but I'm afraid it just isn't going to happen. If I want a certain kind of result, I have to make a certain kind of choice. And that is what the fruit of the Spirit is all about, choosing a spiritually healthy diet. That's making me hungry, isn't it? All right, there's a... Yes. Right. Well, you know, the advantage to the downstairs class, the young people, yes. And there have been a few times when I got up here, I was going to the bathroom, but I ended up making my way downstairs, and they normally have some extra food. So, but how many donuts they see? Like 18,000? 18,720 donuts.
Ron Harper used to, when he worked at the hospital, go home and eat a healthy lunch with Dicey, and then stop and get a cheeseburger on the way back.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that.
She knew it.
Right. We may, Chris, send you up to Casey's. I think they've got donuts. There's a anyway. Yeah, if you want to make people happy, wherever you work at school, wherever, bring a box of donuts, but bring plenty, right? So.
Never seen a kale donut yet.
No, I haven't. So. Well, so this story, it's like, it's too good to be true, and you still got to make choices, right? And choices that basically the idea is, we've got to decide if we're going to choose the fruit of the Spirit as opposed to other things. And that's what Paul's doing, in the workouts, talking about he's encouraging the Galatian church to make these choices. One thing says they can choose to follow the teachings of Jewish religious leaders who want to modify the gospel of Jesus. And that's, Paul talks about that in a lot of different places, maybe not so much right here, but here he's talking about making choices, choosing love and joy over various sinful desires. So let's talk about the fruit of the Spirit, and then I'm going to ask you to give examples, and you can go over examples in the Bible, or or in someone else, maybe not in the Bible, but for example, love's the first one. Love is seeing people like God sees them. He sees their purpose, value, potential, and uniqueness. Love places worth on another person and then moves to show them their worth in our eyes, and more importantly, in God's eyes. One big barrier to love is apathy, which is the decision to do nothing. Apathy just doesn't care about what others are worth or the potential they have. So, you don't have, hate is the opposite of love, but apathy is too. You know, it's just a little bit different branch of that. Any ideas of examples of someone in the Bible or otherwise on this idea of love, seeing people the way God sees them, and putting worth and value and recognizing people's uniqueness? Yes.
I would say, Jesus is being willing to talk to people who are rejected by society. The Samaritan woman, the woman who had the issue of bleeding, lepers.
Yeah.
He saw their worth.
And that was what was so striking, why he was different from the religious leaders of the day, and then other folks who didn't quite have the love Jesus had. I agree. That's what my book at home, I wrote that down. Yeah, yes.
I thought of Job, he wasn't too excited about going to Nineveh. That was kind of a lack of love. He was a little apathetic about how, or not believing that they could turn around.
Yeah, he really did not have love. He was obeying God, but he did not do it with love, and he was sorry that they repented, when they did, and so that showed. I mean, he did obey God, but he didn't have the right attitude, and he was addressed. God addressed that with him too. So, yes.
They're talking about a worldly example of whatever you're talking about, Jesus going to the people that a lot of, I can't believe he talks to, think of teachers and other people. What is that saying, it's the kids that maybe have the most discipline problems, the most concerns. They're the ones that really need that love and attention that's more so than others. So it takes us working really hard maybe sometimes to see that even though it's a challenge, that we need to show love, not just to the ones it's easy to show love.
Yeah, I mean that's the lesson for us. We get down to how we live, and it goes back to Jesus. Like I said, the folks with the leprosy, the demon possession, poor, various. Again, not necessarily the folks who were making the A's in school, that type of thing, but he saw uniqueness and value in everybody, and that was really what was so shocking, so different from what the people and even his apostles witnessed, and they struggled with all of that, but of course they were around Jesus for 3 years, and they the lessons eventually sunk in, when Jesus was gone. They remembered his example. Yes?
The Jewish people were really not used to be going out to seeing other people, because they'd almost walk across the street if somebody, if a Gentile came by, they didn't want anything to do with those people.
Yeah.
Just completely, and that was so foreign to them that Jesus would talk to somebody, a Gentile or a publican or whatever, they just couldn't see that.
Well, they were viewed as what to the Jews? Unclean is the word I was thinking about. And unclean and not worth talking to. And yet Jesus did. Like
They've been the only group all those years that, the so-called chosen group. And I think they had a hard time. They just couldn't understand it. They thought this, I could understand where they were coming from, but why they couldn't be converted after they were being talked to, why they didn't fall in line more so. But, they thought they were the only one.
yeah, and they human nature, what it is. So they were special, God's special people, and when Jesus showed, well, there's another way, they just could not they rejected that. They were too hung up in their own, human nature pride than, the lessons Jesus was showing them that, no, it's, everybody's God's children.
It just wasn't 1 or 2 years. Look at all the years that they were groups by tradition, generations.
Yeah, and I'd say that is human nature, and to think, oh, we're special, and we're better than these people, and they couldn't handle that. So, yeah.
I was going to say, what's changed over the centuries? Aren't we a very cliquish type people ourselves? We kind of pick and choose who we'd like to be with, what seems to be the way we think or the way we philosophize. It's a never-ending battle, and that's the reason why the fruits of the Spirit are so important for us to pick up on and apply them to our lives.
Yeah, it's important for us, that we're here and we're hearing teachings, and it's up to us, to exhibit these traits and exhibit the love to people in our community, right? So we don't want to get stuck in that, right? But hey, we're the special people, and Jesus is saying, no, you're here to serve, not to be served. Yes.
In that section in Galatians that was just read, the last sentence was a warning to us, or whoever, that let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't, he's talking to them, but he's talking to us, all Christians moving forward here, that, we can't be conceited. Yeah, we've got the truth, and so we got it made, and we think it's our worth, and it's not our worth, it's Jesus' worth. So that's a good point. That's speaking to us. We'll go to the next fruit. Joy is a deep and continuing awareness of God's presence and blessings. It is not found in the pursuit of pleasure or the circumstances of happiness. It dwells in the abiding presence of God and shows us that we dwell in His hands. One big barrier to joy is discontentment. Discontentment refuses to see the presence of God in the moment because it calls us to see the moment as unfulfilled, unproductive, or undesirable. Discontentment keeps us searching for the next best thing or next pleasure. Any examples of joy? Yeah. It was basically said in, letters, I've been stoned, shipwrecked, and all this, but, basically I've got Jesus, and I'm content with that. Yeah, that's the example I thought. Any other examples?
What about the prodigal son? He was discontent with his life. He said, I want my inheritance. I want to do what I want to do. And then once he did, he realized, no, I had it better off before.
Right. So he was pursuing happiness, but he didn't have joy.
Yeah.
When he left the house, right? And when did his thing, his own thing, and he discovered, no, that's not joy, and it wasn't happiness either for him. But he, and like I said, he did make the decision to come back, and he realized what true joy was. Well, I think going back to Roger's statement, Paul, and I think of Paul and Silas. They're singing in the prison, the jail, and I don't think you would call that happiness, but they had joy. They knew, God was with them, Jesus was with them. So.
But if you're feeling down, singing helps bring you up.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, right. Absolutely, and I think most of us, I would say recognize that, even we're just, singing to ourselves, right? So.
Yeah,
seem like there was any fear there. At
Yeah.
least it's not brought out in the scripture.
Right. Well, they had joy, the way it's described. You know, it was contentment. They knew they were, you know, they were doing things to try to please God, you know, and serve Him. And so they had joy in it. And what is the apostles? Tradition says, you know, how many of them died a martyr's death? All but one. John lived to be a ripe old age, but everyone else, tradition says, you know, was crucified upside down, or beheaded, or you know, that type of thing. But they kept doing it, right? So that's your point. Yes.
Songs that Jesus spoke out, the joy, joy, joy down in my heart. So sometimes I think of joy as just something made me happy or joyful for a minute, but this is the joy inside of you. You've got God in your heart.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, where? Down in my heart. Where? Yeah, right? So, but that's where it is. It's not outward. I mean, I go to a basketball game, you know, over the weekend, and the Rams will win, and I'll be happy and all of that. But the thing is, it's not the outward circumstance where a team wins or loses or something happens in your life. It's this inner joy that you're going to have no matter what happens around you. So, very good. See, we remember those songs, don't we? Yeah. Okay.
Sunshine on my shoulders may make me happy, but it may not last
Yeah.
when the sun goes away.
Right. That's right. So whether it's sunny out, you know, it's sunny out today, it's beautiful. Cloudy out, you still got the joy. It's no matter what the circumstances. Good. The next fruit is peace. So that's related to joy, I think, in some ways. It's an act of trust in God's sovereignty. It is knowing that whatever the moment holds, God is in charge. Peace is not the absence of conflict. God is present in the storms of life. He is able to work in any circumstance you face. One big barrier to peace is worry, because it holds us in one place in time. It limits our vision to one problem or one event in our lives. It blinds us to the spiritual truth that God is in charge, because worry tells us we have to find our own solutions to our own problems. Any examples of peace you can think about? Yes.
Moses comes to my mind, in the fact that he was on the other side, the rich side, the prosperous side, and then he found out who he was. And when he found out who he was, he had that peace that come over him, as just said, that he found out that God was in charge of everything, and he put his faith in that. That's pretty good peace when it comes to life.
Right. Yeah, and he lost all. He was, you know, he found peace when he was out in the wilderness, and you know, of course, got married and lived his life there. And then when he was called back to lead, he had the peace to do that, didn't he? Yeah. Did you raise your hand? Or? No. Okay. But it's a lot like joy. It's something you have inwardly, because you know. I mean, you have faith in God.
And it's not temporary. I mean, once you get joy or peace, or it's supposed to be a permanent feature that's with you for all.
Yeah.
Always.
And it's not the absence of conflict, right? Because we're going to have conflict, but it's how you deal with conflict, right? So if you've got peace in your heart, you can deal with it. Why? Because God's present. Because we're not going to avoid the conflict, but we can still have peace even when conflict, you know, the storms are all around us.
We got concern, I guess, don't we?
Oh yeah, sure. I guess there's a difference between concern and worry, and everybody worries to some extent, right? But we're not we're not, we're really taught not to worry, be concerned, but ultimately you have your faith in God that you're going to be able to get through the situation. But no, we all, we want things to go well, not only for us, but for others, and sometimes, it's just out of our hands. So sometimes it's hard not to worry, right? Yeah. About patience, which is living in step with God's timing. It is a focus on what God is doing and a surrender of our own need to control. Patience calls for us to follow, not lead. One big barrier to patience is frustration. Frustration causes us to fume and rage over our lack of control. Frustration tells us we need to be moving now to fix this now, or else all might be lost. Frustration blames everyone and everything for the problems we face and keeps us in the loop of rehearsing our failings and weaknesses. Any examples of patience?
Joseph?
Joe, yeah. Right. Yeah, years and years. Yeah, it's a very good example. Well, we always think of Job, right? Patience of Job, and of course, Job had his struggles, and his friends were trying to get him to blame God and others, and
Well, he even wanted to directly hear from God.
yeah. Well,
I mean, he had concern.
he did. Yeah.
He had some frustrations.
He didn't later on, though, did he? I said he didn't later on, though, did he?
So, yeah, I mean, realizing that, we're not in control, which is hard for all of us, and to different degrees, but it's hard not to feel like you're in control, but you gotta realize that, ultimately, and exhibit patience, trust in God. Kindness is the ability to be generous with God's grace. Kindness calls us to seek the best for those around us. This means taking our eyes off ourselves and seeing others with the eyes of God. As we extend God's grace, we extend an invitation to salvation, transformation, and hope. One big barrier to kindness is selfishness, which disregards others and their needs. It doesn't look for opportunities to share grace. Selfishness proclaims oneself as the most important thing in the world. It forces each of us to live without caring about being salt and light. Christ-like or godly, we see only ourselves. Examples of kindness.
Ruth.
Yeah, tell us about Ruth.
She was her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Took care of her mother-in-law and brought a lot of stuff home from the field to feed her.
Yeah, it's a very good example. So she could have stayed with her people, but no, she went to, take care of her mother-in-law, right? So.
She made that her first priority. I think that's where kindness comes in.
Yeah.
We forgot ourselves and made.
Yeah, and it really is. It's the opposite of self. It's others. It's because you got kindness. You're displaying that. You're giving it to others. Yes.
Saying about money, the selfish part, the Pharisees, they thought that they had it all. Didn't want anybody else to have it. God and stuff. They were selfish, not kind.
Yeah, they didn't want to share God's grace.
Yeah, Jesus called them out about that. He said, you're supposed to be helping people instead of you're taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
Definitely selfish.
Yeah, it becomes very obvious when somebody selfish and unkind toward others, and we naturally recoil against that. Good thing, we've got, that God's put that in us, that we rail against unkindness, and we see it way too much. We just don't want to. We want to make sure we're giving the kindness, right?
Can we rail against unkindness in a way that upholds these things, though?
Exactly.
Because it very easily slips into doing all the opposite.
Exactly.
Demanding it change now, and hate, and violence even.
That's a good point.
All in the name of you're not being kind enough.
Yeah, because we got a lot of that going on right now. And then, like you said, the reaction is, I don't like someone being unkind. We don't, and we can't lose our own Christ-likeness, fruits of the Spirit. Yeah. Yes?
I think kindness today also is what people say, and social media has been, it can go either way, but, to be, I think most of our mothers, said, if you can't say something good, don't say anything at all, people use that as a format a lot of times, why comment, or anything, so. And words really hurt people, so. And of course, the reverse is that is for us, some kind word can do wonders, for people sometimes.
Right. Well, a couple things, yeah. Well, yeah, you hit it on the head. Now, I'm reading a book right now. It's called Lincoln and the Pursuit of Peace, or something along those lines. And again, thinking about, the Civil War, was fought, and it was fought to end slavery. But the North triumphed, and Lincoln had this, vision of, we're bringing people in. You got it. There were two parts of it. This is really interesting, this book. And it talked about some other wars where people didn't necessarily follow Lincoln's advice. He demanded unconditional surrender. It was no armistice like World War I. Okay, unconditional surrender, but then kindness thereafter. Basically, mercy. We're bringing you back in, and there's some things non-negotiable. Slavery's done. You've got to give your allegiance to the United States. No more traitorous acts. Okay, but we're going to give mercy. We don't want to destroy the South. We want to build it back up, the people up, and that was his vision. And he gets shot, and things go a little bit awry with Reconstruction afterwards, and the country basically suffers for the next 100 years because of that. But kindness, and that was, he led, with malice toward none, with charity toward all. That was in his second inaugural address, and that was his idea, to bring back the brothers and sisters in love, and instead of vengeance. Vindictiveness is no way to live or to lead. And so, anyway, that's what I've been reading lately, but kindness.
I used to watch 10:30 shows.
The which shows?
The shows that,
Oh,
ABC.
10:30? Okay, yeah, right.
And I don't even look at it now. If you want to feel like kindness, don't let your kids watch those shows. I mean, there's kindness, non-kindness poured out in people's mouths in most stations anymore.
Well, it's kind of like, I don't normally watch, though. I mean, I'm not opposed to watching them, but I don't, but You can talk about the good old days, but yeah, Johnny Carson, it was a little bit more. The humor was a little bit more gentle, wasn't it? So it's a little different.
That's how our world has changed. Kind of think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Johnny Carson, that was the kind of the way we were, but now, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's still called entertainment.
Yeah. Well, you know, we want a little bit of kindness in our humor too, right? So, not so much vindictiveness. Goodness. It's a trustworthy integrity that leads to the intentional display of God's love in the world. Goodness is about living by one standard, the standard of Jesus Christ. He defines how we live and what we think. He determines our actions and our schedules. He shines through us and into the world. One big barrier to goodness is compromise. Compromise tells us that we can live with one foot in the world and the other in heaven. It divides our loyalties and diffuses our impact. Compromise puts Jesus beside any other thing to which we want to surrender and then tells us this is reasonable. Examples of goodness. We're kind of hitting on all of this anyway. All these. What's that? Oh, there you go. Yeah. That's why he's called good, right? So he wasn't selfish. He didn't think he was better than the other person, even though, you know, the Jewish leaders thought they were better than the person that needed help. It's kind of like the, you know, we've got places to go. If someone needs help on the road, you know, and so, maybe, we're called to help them, right? So, instead of being in a hurry to get to church or something, but the Good Samaritan's a great example. So,
How about the father and the prodigal son? The father he was done wrong by his son wanting to come up as before he got him, but the father stood there and waited for him to come back. And then he took care of him when he come back. And then he had to take care of the other son who didn't like the way it was going. He presented goodness on both sides all the way through.
yeah, the great example. The Father is God, to us. Yeah, a perfect example of goodness.
That's a good example. It brings out that son that stayed home the whole time, and then he sees his brother come in, and his dad basically treats him just as if nothing had ever happened. We don't know by the scriptures all the teachings that he was giving to him as well, but that's another story about that. The other son, he resented him.
Yeah.
But sometimes people are like that. That God can forgive people, but people like the son can't forgive sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's the way.
That's a story in learning to forgive people.
Yeah.
Because people are going to make mistakes.
That's a lesson for us. God can and does forgive, and we should be forgiving. If God's going to forgive, that's putting us. When we do that, we're elevating ourselves over somebody else, and instead of realizing, we may not have done what this person did, but we do other things, and God forgives us. All right, good class. So, gentleness, self-control were the last ones. Very good. Okay, Roger, you can lead us in prayer.
Lord, thank you for allowing us to be here today, and thank you for your word. Help us to gain the wisdom and knowledge that we need to apply your word show it